This video will cover a few of the basics to help users better understand how the tenant ledger works and keeps track of balances. For more detailed instructions on printing receipts, posting adjustments, and managing balances, please see each of these items' respective videos. The primary purpose of this video is to demonstrate how to properly read the ledger. So to get to the tenant ledger, pull up Tenant Accounting and Tenant Ledger Receipts and Adjustments. This will get you to the main lookup screen that you are most likely familiar with if you've used the applicant tenant file. We can look up a person's ledger by their last name and first name, their program and project, their unit number, and the last 4 digits of their social security number. I'm just going to look up by last name here. Actually, there we go. And so here's the tenant ledger itself. The first thing we'll notice are the 2 months at the top here. So we can see September and October, and that's because my current accounting month is September. And whenever you are looking at the ledger, you can see the current accounting month you are in, which will be the one at the top, as well as the next accounting month, the second one from the top. And you can choose to look at one month specifically, or you can look at both at the same time by selecting both. To go forward to the next month, someone has to do the month-end close. Normally this will be a specific user who's familiar with the finance. However, if someone needs to close the month-end and they've never done it before, I would highly recommend calling our support line at 608-786-2366 extension 2 for support, and we'll be happy to walk you through your first few month ends. So as we look at the ledger here, the first thing we should note are the specific columns across the top. And the first 3 that all ledgers will always have are date, description, and reference number. The date field is essentially the date of the transaction. So the opening balance for the month of September is going to have the date of 9/1, and the ending balance is going to have whatever day the month ends on. So 9/30 for September, but 10/31 for October. And if we look at these payment records, we can see that these 3 payments are all from 1/16/2014. Also, the description shows what that specific line item is. So each line item is essentially a row. Since this is the opening balance, we can see that this person had all zeros as of the end of October. And then the specific payment items go across, just like before. We also have a reference number. And this reference number is essentially whatever the receipt number was, or in the case of this late fee, the adjustment number. Whenever that item has auto, that means that that particular transaction was generated by HDS Win automatically. For instance, the rental charge, it's grabbing that 157 from whatever their last recertification was. So that would be whatever it says the monthly rent was on their move-in, their last interim, or their last annual. The specific columns, as we look at them, are each a specific line item that they total on. So the items that hit rent total to be the ending balance for rent. So this $75 payment to rent hits here, and the $157 rent charge hits here. And since this one's a negative number and this one's a positive number, they net out to $81.10. So you can always tell what the balance is. You can always tell where these ending balances come from by looking at the line items, and you should always be able to add up opening balance plus any transactions in the column will always net out to the same number as the ending balance. Looking here at other, there's another example. Started out with 0. There was a $20 late fee, and so now the ending balance is $20. Also, you'll notice the total AR column here. So essentially, there can be up to 4 accounts receivable columns on a ledger. And accounts receivable meaning rent owed, utilities owed, work order owed, and it can vary from program to program what you consider AR, but essentially any of the columns that are to the left of the total AR column, aside from reference number, description, and date, are always going to be AR columns. So rent, work orders, other, and utilities are all totaled together in total AR. So we can see that the 7590 coming from rent also hits total AR, but it doesn't hit any of the other columns. The 157 that's in rent is also hitting total AR, doesn't hit the others. And then the $20 in late fee also hits total AR because it's one of these 4 AR columns at the top. So essentially, total AR is the actual amount owed when you factor everything together. And the other 4 columns to the left of it are more of a breakdown. So this specifically shows us what's only rent, what's only other. So other could be court costs or late fees, like our example. And then to any column that's to the right of total AR is an equity column. So that would be things like our security deposits. If you're running a home ownership program that uses MIPA, MIPA will generally be to the right of total AR to be an equity column. And if you have a principal balance, it will also be an equity column to the right of total AR. Equity columns do not get factored into total AR because they're not considered an accounts receivable column. For instance, security deposit, this is just to track how much of the deposit they have so that you can transfer it back on their move out. We also have various options at the bottom. We can do receipts and adjustments, but we're not going to cover those in this specific video. We can run the ledger report for a specific date range, and we can choose to print notes, do a summary, show any voided records. I'm just going to show the 2 months we're looking at. And this gives us a report of the ledger that you can print out by selecting this button here to put it in their file. We also have the option to select a specific transaction on the ledger. For instance, if I were to click on the late fee, I can hit transaction info. And so this would show me any comments that were entered on it. I can see that there weren't any comments entered on the late fee. I could add something to this. For instance, I'll just type in test here. Now when I click on it, it shows my user account when I entered the comment, and then it says test. When you look at the specific transaction info items, you can also see the time that it was specifically entered, who entered it, and what the item was. So if I were to click on this payment on account and do the same thing, it's going to show me, right, I guess I don't have a timestamp on this one. This transaction's from the 16th of January, so I don't think that it's going to look the way it's supposed to here, but normally on any receipt or adjustment you looked at, you would see the date and time entered and the user who did it. Also, you can hit tenant info to get to the tenant info screen. Here we can see any actions that we're doing, and there's a move-in action, so that's where the 157 tenant rent's coming from. If you hit required deposit, it's going to show you the required deposit amounts. You can edit them from this screen as well, but here we can see that the required amount for security is 350. 350 has been paid, so nothing's due. Same with the key deposit, 15 required, 15 paid, nothing is due. Also, we have the option to enter in notes for the household. So if we hit this notes button, it gets us to this screen, and we can add a specific note. For instance, we can do one for late fees, and we can just say late fee was posted for September. So that's the basics of how to use the ledger. If you want more specific information, like how to set up a repayment agreement, how to post adjustments or print receipts, please see the following video. One thing I forgot to mention is that on a specific line item, whenever an item is a negative value, that means that it's a credit. So it's a payment on account, the payment of the security, and the payment of the key deposit. These are all funds coming into the account. And since there's no debits in security and normally there never would be a charge, these credits at the bottom are going to stay here. Anything that's a positive value is essentially a debit or an amount owed. So anytime a charge comes in, it's going to come in as a positive, like rental charge. Our late fees, $20. And so the negative amounts from the payments will generally subtract off this. Say you were going to credit this person $50, say they got overcharged extra $50 rent, we could go in and do an adjustment in 0102, and if we did a positive $50, that would make them owe more. So I want to make sure to do it as a negative so that it actually reduces what they owe. And so now it went from 8110 to 3110 because I used a credit instead of a charge.